Welcome to the Legacy Lounge. I'm Em Melrose and I am so glad that you are here. In each episode, we aim to inform, inspire, and empower you with practical insights that help you to think differently about life, death, and everything in between. This is a space where we explore the choices, values, and the experiences that shape the legacies that we leave behind. Whether we're talking about financial planning, end-of-life care, or personal growth, our guests bring knowledge and lived experience to help you make more intentional decisions. We also honour and respect each individual's beliefs, recognising that legacy is deeply personal. Through these conversations, we hope to offer not only clarity but peace of mind as you reflect on what matters most and how you wish to be remembered. I'm joined today by my friend Bernie Benton, someone whose work I deeply respect. Bernie brings honesty, empathy, and creativity to conversations around death, grief, and legacy. Her book, My Life, My Death, My Wishes, is a powerful invitation for reflection, planning, and speaking openly about what matters most. In this episode, we're going to explore how ceremony, storytelling, and emotional care can help us to honour life and prepare for its end with intention and heart. Bernie, I am thrilled to bits that we're here together again today. I know this conversation is going to be open, honest, and probably cut to the core rather, of some things that are really challenging to talk about. So thank you so much for sharing this time with me.
And thank you for inviting me again to talk to you. Honestly, I know you through our celebrant work anyway, but it's a real pleasure to come and have the opportunity to talk about things we share a common connection with and are equally passionate about.
Absolutely. So I want to get going by talking about your book. You know, you've recently published a book, My Life, My Death, My Wishes. Tell us a little bit about the book and your inspiration to create it.
Yeah, well, I've got, here's one I made earlier.
Hurrah!
So I wrote it. It's been in my head ever since I started training as a celebrant. And I started training as a celebrant back in 2018, finished training at the beginning of 2019, started working with families in grief and loss, then started doing bits and pieces as a doula. And what I was getting was a lot of similar but unique as well, but similar sort of problems coming up. Guilt, shame, disconnect, lack of awareness, surprise, shock, all of those things, frustration at they're not, or it being perceived that there wasn't a solution or a way of doing things that would work quite for the personalities within a family dynamic or whatever. And as the months went on, I started and I was reading and I was doing these things. I thought I need to gather all this together. I need to debunk the big myth and pull off the shroud that covers the end of life funeral industry. That sort of suggests to everyone assumes there is one way of doing things. You know, this happens and this happens and this happens and this happens, and you just are taken along that conveyor belt as a family, because it's not like that, or it doesn't have to be like that. That might suit some people, and that is fine if it does. But there is so much more choice and personal care and community interaction and solutions that are available to people who are dying, their family, people who are grieving, and support. And I just started putting it all together and sort of writing it in my head. So the book got written in my head, and then I went away for a week and I just brain dumped, and then spent several months afterwards just tidying it up. But that's how it came about. So the idea was I wanted a book that was comfortable and easy, that felt like you were having a conversation with somebody like you or
Yeah,
I,
yeah.
who was hand holding them
Yeah,
through,
yeah.
and that kept things in a language and that was easy to understand. So it's made up of short chapters on a multitude of things, from practical stuff like lasting powers of attorney and wills, to choices of what to do with ashes, to where does laughter and comedy and humor come into
Yeah,
grief, and
yeah.
and all the sport support and things in between. And in between each chapter there is some space with prompts where people can make their own notes. So by the end of it, they should have together all of their thoughts and ideas, their wants and their don't wants,
Yeah.
and their fears and their hopes written down, so they can then come to someone like you and do
Yeah.
a wishes, end of life wishes plan, or a quality of life statement, or go away and have a conversation
Yeah.
with their family
Yeah.
or their
Yeah.
friends about things.
I think it's a beautiful tool for empowering people to take control of their
Yeah.
legacy, right? And to take it at their own pace.
Yeah.
Because these are chunky conversations. These are
Yeah.
not conversations that we step into. We don't educate people
Yeah.
about legacy. We might get to our 40s or 50s before it's the first time we're having
Yeah.
to experience planning a funeral for
Yeah.
a loved one. It's not something that we are familiar or comfortable with. And I think as a tool, it's beautiful. I like the way it's digestible,
Yeah.
it's friendly, it's safe. And if
Yeah.
you're not ready to go and have a conversation with somebody, it's almost a friend to guide
Yeah.
you, isn't it?
It's designed to help you think through the process, signpost you to more information, and then make you want to have or start that conversation with somebody who is reticent. If nothing else has happened from writing this book, it's enabled and facilitated conversation with my own parents,
Beautiful.
which has been a joy. I found out this weekend properly how my mum and dad met and how my dad proposed and things like that. Things I hadn't even realised I didn't know,
Yeah.
and it would be so sad not to know
Yes.
when it's too late.
Yeah.
So it's all of those things. It starts you thinking, and it starts you acknowledging not just what you want, but what you fear, and how what you think you want towards end of life is going to impact, and the effect it's going to have on those people who are going to have to execute that for you.
Yeah.
So you can have those conversations, and it's great.
And that's a beautiful segue into what people overlook when they're planning their legacy, because there's the obvious things, and you've just mentioned that in terms of a living will, lasting power of attorney, having a will in place. But, what else is it that, in the experiences that you've had and engaging with individuals that are, those things that are overlooked?
Communication is the biggest thing. People think that they're prepared. I keep referring to my parents. My parents were prepared. They'd written a will. They'd done their lasting powers of attorney. I didn't know where they kept them.
Yeah.
I didn't know if they had what their plans quite were for executorship.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what the content was.
Right.
Which is fine, they don't have to do that. But what if I had made the assumption that I was going to be the executor and that I wasn't? That shock. Or if you think that they are leaving something in their legacy and they're not, or they've decided that what they really want is a direct cremation, but you, in your mind, have been, preparing for this big support network of people and this wake or this memorial. And I think being organised and planning for yourself is fine, but you need to also, equally importantly, communicate that to the people affected, the people your legacy is for, because that you need to know how they feel about that. If my dad said, of course you're going to do my funeral, and I will. But I'm glad I know that he's expecting me to do that, because that's not going to be an easy thing. And I feel very privileged that he wants that. But I might not have felt able.
Sure.
And but I know we've had a conversation now, and I know that if I needed support, I could have that with somebody else as
Yes.
well, so I
Yeah.
could do it alongside and
Yeah.
someone else, and wouldn't have to feel that I was letting him down.
Yeah.
Things like, deciding that you want to leave your body to science, for example, that's quite a big one, and then whoever is executing the will realizing that the people that it's not suitable to be left to science. What is the plan B?
Yeah.
Have your executors, your community, got permission to do something different or do something else if that can't happen?
Yeah.
Because there are circumstances where what you wish to happen, not just when you've died, but as you're dying, or if you're at a point where you can't communicate, can't happen. And you need to talk around those as well, so that the guilt and the sense of failure that people in grief often feel, that compounds their grief, is minimalised. Because what you don't want your legacy to be is one where people are pained
Yeah.
any more than.
And there's a big piece in here, isn't there, that you've kind of tickled around the edges of, which is about offering peace of mind.
Yeah.
And whilst, as you talk about, here are my wishes, this is what I want to happen, if I haven't communicated that to somebody else, they're left not knowing.
Yeah, exactly.
And having the courage to open those conversations in a safe way.
I've never found. I have found that people are reticent about having the conversation, but I've never found that after the conversation people feel worse.
Yeah.
There's a sense of relief
Yeah.
in the knowledge that it is out there.
Yeah.
This kind of grey area that's lurking, the elephant in the room,
Yeah.
which is hence Ellie is it weighs you down.
Yeah.
It weighs you down and it worries you. And as you get older, and that kind of certainty of dying, because we're all getting there. I love that. There's an organisation called Dead Positive, and their tagline is "Dying since the day I was born." We're all heading there. That's our only certain outcome.
Yeah.
But as we get older and that gets nearer, then the kind of the looming, what do I want, what if, the fears, the doubts, the change of mind that people have as they get older, because they get more emotional or spiritual or what's the word, when you get more sympathetic and more kind of anyway, you get more emotional about things, or you become more aware that you don't know things, and there are things that matter. Things that didn't matter when you're in your 20s and 30s start mattering. So you need to start having those conversations, and those things that you're worried about need to be aired. And it's always the way. If you are frightened of something and you hold it in on yourself, then it just grows into this big dark thing, doesn't it? If you voice it and have a conversation, somehow it's shared, or it's lifted, or it just is dispersed. Even it's like
it's empowering, isn't it? It's empowering,
really.
in finding those safe places where you can just voice it. Speaking something else, speaking something out, can be healing in itself and bring an element of peace of mind.
I mean, what goes on in our imagination is never as bad as the reality. As bad as the reality might be, there's that added sort of doubt and worry and weight of holding it in, and
we're all about creating a safe space for people, aren't we?
Definitely.
Creating a safe space for people to, wherever they're at in their journey, to be able to have that conversation. So you have held the hands, walked alongside many families. What are the moments that surprise you most?
I am always in awe of the resilience of people and their strength, even when they're not feeling strong. They're feeling like they're falling apart, but they they survive what seems to be an unsurvivable situation, and they find moments of joy and fragments and chinks of light and community, the way that community pulls together when somebody is struggling. That I'm always and never fail to be in awe of it, and the way people find those times, those moments. You're a celebrant as well, and people in their deepest grief after a funeral or whatever, suddenly a card or flowers turn up at your house, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, why have this family found the energy to even think about me for a minute outside of it? And I just think, it makes me look at myself and think, I've got more strength than I believe in. We all have got more strength than we think we have, and more determination and more will to carry on and find a way than we imagine. And you witness that so much when people are at those points in life where you would think it would be impossible.
And it's beautiful, isn't it? It's beautiful for us to be able, we're in a very privileged position to walk alongside people in those, I'm going to say, one of the most challenging moments of their lives. Where we see them at their rawest.
Yeah, I mean, it is an absolute privilege to be welcomed in or allowed into the inner sanctum of somebody's heart.
Yes.
You're basically, you are a stranger, and you go away knowing them, and carrying a piece of that family story away with you. Every family that I have worked with or walked alongside or supported in any capacity, a bit of them shapes me. And I always tell them that, because I think it's comforting to know that. I didn't know, most of the time as a funeral celebrant, you don't know the person you're helping celebrate. But by the end of the conversations you have a real connection to them, their story and their connections. And it's
and to hold space and honour that and be the voice for their loved ones. Okay, so let's focus on the uncomfortable truth about death and grief. And what would you like people to talk more openly about?
All of it. I think that we as a country, more than many others, are absolutely terrible at acknowledging and sitting along and walking alongside grief and loss. I see families, the hardest bit quite often for a family who have lost someone, or for a person who is terminally ill, is the way that everybody else shies, pulls away from it. So they might not visit because they don't know what to say, or they don't like hospitals, or they feel uncomfortable, or they'll cross the road because something has happened. And it's so isolating for the dying and the grieving for that to happen. We don't have to know what to say. That's not what we're there to do, have an answer. There is no answer. No. If you're in grief, or if you're dying, and if you're frightened, you're dying and you're frightened and you're grieving. And whatever I say, as good as my intention might be, it's not going to take that pain and that grief and that sadness away. I can't give someone a book and say, here, read this, that'll sort out your grief.
There's no manual, is there?
No, there's no manual. There's no time frame. There's nothing. So, but don't shy away. You can say to someone, hello, I'm here. I'm happy to sit with you, be with you. But I know that whatever I say is not going to take any pain away. The situation it's shit. It really is.
And I think it's really important that that point that you make about crossing the road, or how would we feel? And I think only when you've put on the shoes of grief, and the truth is that grief never leaves us. We learn to walk with it. Yeah, I like that analogy of grief is the love that has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And the depth of grief that we feel, I think, is in honor, dare I say, of the relationship and the love that we held for that person. So if we can just accept that it is going to be present, and for some people, they don't feel it until, or it doesn't, doesn't join their life journey until the latter part of their life. But when you've stepped into a pair of shoes, I think you start to see the world in a different way. There's more compassion. I'm going to say the conversation becomes a little bit easier because you kind of know what you do and you don't want to say.
Yeah.
That sounds a bit daft, but
Yeah, I mean, if you have grieved or lost, then I guess that there is a credibility and an experience that you're taking with you in there. But even with that, everybody's grief journey is
totally different.
and I think just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean you can't be there for someone. So you and I think that's what people are frightened of. They're frightened of saying the wrong thing. They're frightened of not knowing what to say. They're frightened of the silence. They're the grieving people, because of that, then feel that they need to put on a brave face or pretend they're okay or only go out if they're feeling joyful. I had a friend of mine whose husband died, and I'd say, do you want to come over? And she'd go, oh, I'm not really in the mood. I said, I'm not asking you to come over to entertain me. We can sit in silence. You can bring a book and sit in there and read. I'll read, we can talk about your husband if you want to, or we can talk about something else, or we can talk about nothing. It's, I'm just happy to sit alongside you.
And I guess what you're saying is what I'm hearing you say is there's no right or wrong way.
No.
Showing up with kindness and just being present and showing compassion for somebody is a gift in itself.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to have the words. You don't have to have the actions. There are no solutions. Just be present.
Yeah.
That's all you have to do.
And we can all do that, right?
Everyone can
all
do
that.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the truth. Life is not straight line. Life is not a bed of roses. No. I'm sure if we were to all take a look at our own family dynamic, at some point there will have been tensions. And for that very reason, when we meet a family, we don't know what the story is, what the backstory is. So how do you help to navigate through with families the tensions that might crop up? We've just talked about the fact that people don't know what to say. People may want to themselves hold on to the fact, well, my family's a bit fragmented, or two sisters are not speaking to each other, or whatever that might be. Yet we're coming together to celebrate this a loved one collectively. So
yes, sometimes it's not rosy in a family. Well, usually, to be fair, it's not rosy in a family. We are not Hollywood. Hollywood perfect families.
This isn't a Hallmark moment necessarily.
That's right,
is it?
Exactly. And but everybody thinks that everybody else's family is more normal than theirs. Let me tell you, there is no such thing as a normal family, and there will be tensions in every family. And some people have more tensions than others, but there's always going to be tensions. And I approach it from two different roles. So one as a funeral celebrant, where I have a client who is my next of kin, my point of contact, and the other is when I'm a doula and I'm there. Again, with the client, but quite often with the person who's dying as well. But in all instances, the members of a family that are surrounding someone who is dying or has died will all process and manage their grief and loss in a different way. And that in itself creates additional tension. So even if there wasn't tension, there potentially will become tension when there is grief to deal with, because you might be a person who cries and has outpouring and can't function, whereas your sister or your brother or your mum or your dad, will just get along.
Yes.
We're doing
Yeah,
stuff and
yeah,
acting as if nothing's
yeah,
happened,
yeah.
and this, that, and the other, and that creates a rift and a tension. You obviously and arguments.
Yeah.
So I think what I often do when I'm hearing that from people is to try and explain how everybody responds differently. Quite often there's delayed reaction. People have had different relationships
Yes.
with the
Yeah.
people, and it's okay to all approach it from a different place. And I also give them all permission to use their own voice
Yes.
and tell me the story in their way,
Yeah.
because there's no right story, every story or wrong story. Everybody's story is valid because they would have experienced whatever input they've had
Yeah.
in their own way, and
yeah.
that will affect. I mean, yes, it's challenging if you are trying to organise a funeral and there are 20 people who all want it to look a different way. Obviously, in that role, your first point of contact has to be the person who is charged with
Yes,
doing that,
yeah.
and they have to agree everything. But you can have conversations around that and try and include other people's viewpoints. But what is really important, I think, is that, especially in this day of direct cremations, where you're having a memorial or a celebration of life after, is that you're not limited to one.
Yeah.
You don't have to just have one opportunity to say goodbye, and that is the 30 minutes, 40 minutes, 20 minutes at a creme or a graveside. You can have as many life celebrations as and memorials with as many very different groups of people as you want for the same person.
Yeah.
So if you need to have two because you have, then have two.
And I think that's really important, isn't it? The truth of it is direct cremations have become more popular.
Yeah.
The cost of living is probably the most compelling reason, dare I say, why people do that. There's a lot of national advertising out there, and everybody has their own belief and choice as to what they want to do. But I think we are in a very privileged position as independent celebrant by nature of the work that we do to be able to support families, for us to hold and create space for them to come together and celebrate in many different ways. Because we have a legal obligation to lay that body to rest. But in the same way that people can celebrate their 30, 40, 50th birthdays for a whole year. What's to say that we can't celebrate and take that moment out to celebrate and remember that person?
The thing is, what we do after somebody dies is we honour and remember them for the rest of our lives. Every time we have a conversation about them, every time we look at our children or our grandchildren, we see a trait that reminds us of somebody that they were related to. Every time we pick up an object or look at a picture, or there are multiple times in a day sometimes, but in a lifetime where you will honour and remember someone. How ritualistic and structured you want to make those memorials and celebrations of someone's life is up to you. You can have, we are led to believe that there is one funeral. That is the time where you have to say everything and do the thing just right. But you and your family and the different members of those families will process and feel differently at different points along that journey. So it might be when you're having the original funeral, everyone's too numb, or you and one half of the family are too numb to really get the words out that you want to say at that time, or gather how you feel about it and identify what you need. So you kind of get swept along with the flow of that funeral. There's nothing to stop you a month later, 6 months later, on a specific date going, right, I think we need to gather, have a memorial. I now have in my head what I want to say
Yeah.
and how I want to say it
Yeah.
and where I want to say
And
it.
time, and that's the beauty of it, isn't it? I think the more, the reason behind some of the conversations that we have with the Legacy Lounge is very much about you have choice. We don't know what we don't know, and therefore we've got an opportunity to
Yeah.
do some different things.
I mean, our mission, your mission, having founded the Legacy Lounge, and our mission as partners within it, is that we want to raise the awareness that, what we think is the conveyor belt and the rules and the structure of dying, death, funeral, grief,
Yeah.
get better, move on, hate that phrase, is not all there is to it. There are a multitude of choices and options and different ways to go about that. If you don't know that things exist, you're not going to look for them.
Absolutely.
So my book, The Legacy Lounge, all of the partners within the Legacy Lounge are trying to just say to communities and people and families, there are more than one way to do it.
Yeah.
And if you know that, then you can do it more authentically and more cathartically than you are led to believe, perhaps.
Yeah. So we've got a challenging job, haven't we? I know I'm often asked by people, how do you care for yourself? When we are heart-led individuals, we are working in an industry that is, I'm going to say, filled with sadness, but with that, I'm going to say joy and gratitude and hope.
Yeah.
How do you care for yourself, Bernie? And what are the things that you do to make sure that you look after yourself?
It's a work in progress, I think. It's one of those.
Thank you for being so honest.
It's one of those things that I am aware that I need to do better because there is always, and I think we all, whatever our jobs, we always feel like we could do more or we could give more, and we have to work within the confines of what's available. We want to give all of our time and sit alongside people forever. But I think I take comfort in and reflect back on the love that has been demonstrated within the process and the help or the sense of relief and support I've given. So a family is struggling and in unbearable grief, but I have helped them find a way through a small part of that.
So
step.
that tops you up.
That tops me up in no end. I give myself time. I don't back to back things. For me, I think, in an ideal world, I'd have a few days either side of anybody's service. It's not always the way, but in that I want to hold space for that family on the run up.
Yeah.
I want to process that, and I want to hold space for their decompression after. So I try and find a way to do that.
Yeah.
I go back and reflect on it. I make sure I've contacted them again,
Yeah.
all of those things.
Yeah.
And from my own well-being, I have, some people use a gym and go and have workout time. I use my garden as my gym. I go and sit and weed. It's where my mind kind of like clears and empties and things like that. And I spend time in my garden, and that gives me that kind of like regroup and rebalance time. But it's definitely an area of my work and my lifestyle that I do still need to put some work into.
And we're real human beings, aren't we? I think that's the bit which is really important to acknowledge, that we are going to feel emotion. We would not be in this industry. We would not be privileged to do the roles that we do if we didn't feel stuff, if we didn't feel compassion, if we didn't feel empathy. But it's not ours to own. Right?
No, I mean, we should. If we weren't feeling sad or or upset or ever, then we're in the wrong job.
Absolutely.
We are witnessing heartbreak
Yeah.
quite often.
Yeah.
We are witnessing confusion,
Yeah.
loss, frustration, despair, and we can take a bit of that, and we can live with that, and we can walk with that, and we can show a bit of that even, but it's not ours to own.
Yeah.
It's not our story, it's someone else's.
No.
And we have to, in order to serve other families, we need to be able to
Yeah.
take what we need from it, let go of
Yeah.
what isn't serving us, and move
Absolutely.
on.
Okay, so one of the and we've talked about it a little bit already, but one of the things that I think is often so challenging for people is, what do I say? What do I say to a colleague who's lost somebody dear to them? What do I say to my friend? What is the best bit of advice that you could give to somebody who wants to support somebody, but they think they're going to get it wrong?
Do it anyway. Do it anyway, because there isn't a rule, but what would work to say for one person won't work for another person. Just say. Just acknowledge that it exists. People aren't going to forget that their person has died just because you don't mention that person. They're going to feel awkward or feel like they can't relax about it or can't ever openly be sad about it. So just acknowledge it. You can, and say, I don't know what to say. I am aware that you've lost. I'm sorry that you've lost. I understand that what I say isn't going to provide a solution. I'm here to talk about it if you want to. I'm here to not talk about it and be present for you if you'd prefer.
And I think it's honouring the fact that everybody's grief is unique to them. And when often people say to me, I haven't cried yet, I'm waiting for this explosion. And just to be able to say to them, it might not come. Just because other people are more emotional than you. If you've never been somebody that is highly expressive of your emotion in social environments, there's nothing to say that you're suddenly going to start behaving differently. So,
and people talk about these 7 stages of grief, and I said, well, in theory, there's sort of a roughly 7 stages of grief, but they might not happen in that order. And some of them might not happen at all.
Absolutely.
And, we see on, in movies, someone dies, everyone bursts into tears, everyone hugs one another, there's a bit of a falling out, everyone comes back together. There's a process.
And then we get on with life
again.
and
then we get on with life. But that's not real.
No.
If it happens to you that way, then that's great. But it's, your own journey with your grief at that particular loss will be different to everybody else's and yours with a different person. And the only, I think probably the best bit of advice is to try not to do it by comparison. It's like when someone's pregnant, telling them what it's going to be and what you recommend. Don't try and say this is what you signpost by all means, but don't make someone. Sometimes by comparison, we show empathy by sharing a story that we of our own experience, don't we? Quite often, and that's perhaps not always the best way to do things. Unless someone wants that. So it's, you don't have to have a story of your own to be empathetic to somebody else in their situation. You just have to be.
And that's what I'm hearing you say. That's just a beautiful, beautiful word. Just be present for them. Be authentic with them. Be real with them.
And meet them where they're at. If they don't, you're not after them to be entertained. Allow them to be where they're at, whatever that mood is, whatever that situation is, and accept it. That's all you can do to be a friend, to be a colleague, to be is to be present and be.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you help? Well, I've been testimony to a little bit of this, but how do you help families to create ceremonies and services that are authentic and personal to their loved one.
I think the people like you and I who work in this industry, we certainly have this certain kind of natural empathy and understanding. But I think the trick to it is just to listen. Don't make any assumptions about anyone, and don't have any expectations when you start. Try and get into their space if you can, ideally face to face. And then just listen, just open the door to a conversation. I usually, when I meet a family, I say, look, I could record it, but I'd rather just scribble notes because because by scribbling notes, I get the emotion of it and I'll hold on to it more. And I said, what I prefer is that what I think would work best is if you just speak, and I'll just interject if we get stuck or if I need a bit of extra information. And I said, but can we start? Show me a picture. And I, and then you've kind of, I said, I want to hold this person in my thoughts. I don't know what they look like. Show me a picture, and we start with a picture, and that generally gets the thing flowing. And then sometimes you find that people are being a bit polite and saying what you think, saying all the nice things. I said, oh, God, you must have some naughty stories about this person. I can't believe. Tell me something naughty. We don't have to use it. Tell me something. Tell me something.
I love the sayings. I love the sayings. What would be a typical saying from so and so? Or there's a throwaway comment that's like, hey, tell me more about that. And all of a sudden there's a shift in the conversation, and there's a shift in the permission that they give themselves. We can't say that. Well, tell me anyway. Because it just helps to build the fabric of that individual.
Yeah, exactly. Tell me give me everything. We don't have to use everything, but we can get the essence of everything. And I think as people within this industry, we are naturally good listeners. We don't just necessarily hear the words that are spoken. We hear the tone, the bits that we sort of notice, the bits that are left out. We can see the body language, and the privilege of our role is that we get to write not only what they've said, but what they haven't said, and present them with something, and then they see that we have got them. And there is nothing more wonderful in our job than presenting something. And I always say, I may not have got all the facts right because I scribbled and scribbled. So go through and check the details. But what I hope you'll see in this script that I'm sending you is that I've got the essence of the person and how you felt about them and how they felt and the impact they had on your life. And if I've got that, then the details we can fill in.
Absolutely beautiful. And we are storytellers, aren't we? We are storytellers at such a
we're collectors of stories, and we're deliverers of stories. We kind of echo what's in people's hearts back at them. And I think that in the act of doing that helps them process their grief because they have been seen. And their person has been seen by someone who never perhaps met them. And yet they've rippled into our lives then. And we are carrying a little bit of them. We might not remember every family and all the details of that family, but there will be an essence of a family that lives with us after they, and has impacted us and forever changed us. As small as that might be, it has,
Absolutely. Bernie, thank you so much. We can talk for hours.
We could, couldn't we?
We can talk.
And we do.
But it is beautiful to see you, to share with you the path that you're on, for us both to impact our communities with our hearts and our compassion, and just, hopefully create those ripples that make it okay to continue these conversations.
We're so privileged, aren't we? I feel so lucky in my life to do what I do and to have connected with somebody like you who has had this vision of the Legacy Lounge and to partner that and see where it grows. As you say,
absolutely.
ripples.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for joining me in the Legacy Lounge. I hope today's conversation has given you something to reflect on, whether it's a new perspective, a gentle reminder, or the simple comfort knowing that these topics are worth exploring. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to share it, subscribe, or leave a review. Until next time, take care, and thank you so much for listening.